Imagine waking up one morning. Your job is still there. Your family is fine. Your bills are paid. And from the outside looking in, life seems stable, even successful. And yet, as you sit on the edge of the bed, a quiet emptiness creeps in. A whisper begins. What am I really living for? You can't quite explain it. You're busy, yes. You're achieving, yes. But somewhere inside, the spark is gone. The purpose has slipped through your fingers. If you've ever felt this, you are not alone. In fact, it may be one of the most widespread struggles of our time. Research from Harvard shows that over 60% of young adults, Gen Z, and millennials admit they feel life has no clear purpose or meaning. But this problem doesn't stop with the young. Men and women in their 30s and 40s, midlife, the years when career and family should provide stability, often hit what psychologists call an existential crisis. The goals that once guided them graduate. Get married, buy a house, build a career that have already been checked off or seem increasingly out of reach. And when the old goals lose their power, a question becomes unavoidable. Now what? What's left? This sense of aimlessness is not just a minor inconvenience. It can drain motivation, sap energy, and leave people vulnerable to stress, burnout, and even depression. Without a compass pointing to something larger, life can start to feel like an endless cycle of tasks, stripped of direction. Psychologists describe this cultural epidemic as the meaning crisis, a widespread disorientation in a world overflowing with material comfort, but starving for spiritual clarity. Think about the irony. Never before have we had so much access to comfort, convenience, and technology. And yet never before have so many admitted they feel lost. It's as if we climbed the ladder society told us to climb, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. For men in midlife especially, the weight of this emptiness is heavy. You've worked hard, sacrificed, built stability, but something inside says, this can't be all there is, and so begins the quiet searching. New hobbies, new goals, sometimes even reckless choices to fill the void. Some chase promotions endlessly, others drown themselves in distractions, endless scrolling, binge watching, drinking. Still others withdraw, going through the motions without joy. The struggle is silent, but it is real. And here's the part that makes it worse. Our culture doesn't give us a language for this struggle. We're taught how to earn money, how to climb careers, how to buy things. But we're rarely taught how to wrestle with questions of meaning. In fact, to admit you feel purposeless can feel shameful, like confessing weakness. So most people keep quiet, wearing a mask of competence while inside they feel hollow. But if you felt this way, there's nothing shameful about it. You're not broken, you're human. And humans have always wrestled with the question of purpose. 2,000 years ago, when the Roman Empire was in turmoil, when life expectancy was short, when wars and plagues threatened daily life, the Stoic philosophers confronted the same question. What makes life worth living? Their answer was radically different from the world's promises. The Stoics didn't measure life's meaning by wealth, status, or applause. They taught that the highest purpose of human beings is to live with virtue, to live in harmony with reason, with nature, with the deeper order of the universe. Meaning, for them, was not something to be discovered out there. It was something to be practiced daily, through the quality of your choices. Marcus Aurelius, who could have drowned in the privileges of being emperor, instead wrote to himself every night, at dawn, when you wake, remind yourself, I rise to do the work of a human being. Why be dissatisfied if I am doing the very thing I was made for? Notice how he grounds purpose not in results, not in luxury, but in fulfilling his role as a human being living with justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. And Epictetus, who began life as a slave, taught the same truth. Your purpose is not given by circumstance. It is forged by how you live, how you respond, how you choose to align your actions with virtue. If a slave could live meaningfully, if an emperor had to remind himself daily of his purpose, then meaning is clearly not a privilege of status, it is a discipline of the soul. Now pause and ask yourself, where are you finding your sense of purpose today? Is it anchored in achievements that fade, in possessions that lose their shine, in the shifting approval of others? Or is it rooted in something deeper, your character, your contributions, your growth as a human being? The truth is, the meaning crisis is not solved by more consumption, more distraction, or more shallow goals. It's solved by asking better questions. The Stoics left us those questions that cut through confusion and point us back to what really matters. And in the rest of this journey, we're going to explore 5 of those questions. But here's the important part. These 5 questions are not equal. They build on each other, growing in depth. The first 2 are practical and straightforward questions you can use today to realign your actions. The next 2 will challenge you more deeply, forcing you to rethink what really defines your value. And the final question is the most radical of all, one that can transform emptiness itself into meaning. So stay with me. If you've ever wondered, what am I living for? These questions will not only guide you toward an answer, they may give you back something even more important, a compass you can use every single day, no matter what life throws at you. When we talk about purpose, many people imagine it as something mysterious, waiting to be discovered. They think, if only I could stumble upon the right career, the right relationship, or the right passion, then I would finally know my purpose. But this way of thinking is exactly what leaves so many drifting. Because if purpose depends on luck, on finding the perfect conditions, then most of us will wait forever. The Stoics approached it differently. For them, purpose is not something you find, it is something you live. It is not a hidden treasure buried somewhere outside you. It is a discipline of the mind, a way of aligning your daily choices with something larger than yourself. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the most respected teachers of philosophy, said, "What is the fruit of philosophy? Tranquility, fearlessness, and freedom." Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say the fruit is wealth, or recognition, or status. He points to inner qualities, virtues that no circumstance can take away. For him, that was the essence of purpose, to become the kind of person who lives with integrity, no matter what the world throws at you. Marcus Aurelius echoed this. As Emperor of Rome, surrounded by wealth and power, he had every reason to think his purpose lay in conquest or legacy. Yet in his journal, he reminded himself again and again, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. His purpose was not to control events he could never master, but to master himself, and in doing so, to serve the common good. Seneca, writing to his younger friend Lucilius, drove the same point home. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. To waste time, for Seneca, meant to live without attention to virtue, to chase distractions while neglecting what makes life truly valuable. Purpose, then, was not some grand discovery. It was the daily act of directing your time toward what mattered. So what does this mean for us today? In a world drowning in options, distractions, and competing definitions of success, it means we can stop waiting for purpose to magically appear. We can choose it here and now, by committing to live according to values that endure. The Stoics believed those values could be summed up in 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom, the ability to see clearly what matters. Courage, the willingness to act despite fear. Justice, the commitment to treat others fairly and contribute to the common good. Temperance, the discipline to govern our desires instead of being governed by them. To the Stoics, living with these virtues was the highest purpose of all. And here's the liberating truth. You don't need to change your job, your city, or your entire life to begin. You need only to ask yourself each day, am I acting with wisdom? Am I showing courage? Am I treating others justly? Am I practicing self-control? These questions reframe ordinary life into a field of purpose. Think about it. A man stuck in a job that feels meaningless might think he needs to quit everything and start over. Maybe. But maybe his deeper purpose is not about the job title at all. Maybe it's about mentoring a younger colleague, or providing for his family with dignity, or approaching his work with honesty when others cut corners. In doing so, he is living with virtue, and that is already a life of purpose. This doesn't mean the Stoics rejected ambition. They did not say you should avoid goals, but they urged us to build goals on the foundation of virtue, not vanity. Ambition that serves virtue, building a business that benefits others, raising children with care, serving one's community that is aligned with purpose. Ambition that serves ego, collecting status symbols to impress others, only deepens emptiness. So here's the question for you. What if purpose has been in front of you all along? What if it's not about chasing something new, but about choosing to live with virtue in what you already face today? This is why Stoicism endures. In an age of meaning crisis, when society tells us we must keep chasing the next achievement, the Stoics remind us, purpose is not up there. It is right here, in the quality of how you live. And that brings us to the heart of this journey, the 5 questions. Each one takes these Stoic principles and puts them into practical form. Questions you can carry into your daily life. They are not abstract theories. They are tools. And as we move through them, you'll see how they build, layer by layer, from clarity about your actions to a radical reimagining of your destiny. The first question is simple, almost deceptively so. But if you let it, it can cut straight through distraction and force you to face what really matters in your day. The first Stoic question may sound almost too simple. Is what I'm doing today truly important? But simplicity can be deceptive. Sometimes the deepest truths hide in the plainest words. Think about how you spent today. How much of it was devoted to tasks that actually matter to you? And how much of it was consumed by noisy mails, errands, scrolling through feeds, obligations that left you busy but not fulfilled? Most of us move through our days on autopilot, telling ourselves we're being productive. Yet at night we wonder why life still feels empty. That emptiness is not always about doing too little. Sometimes it's about doing too much of what doesn't matter. The Stoics were ruthless in cutting through this illusion. Seneca warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." His point wasn't that people are lazy. In fact, many of us are frantically busy. His point was that we waste our lives by pouring energy into things of no real importance. We run after recognition, we chase approval, we accumulate possessions, we let trivial concerns devour our focus. And then we wonder why purpose escapes us. Imagine someone working 12 hours a day at a job they secretly despise. From the outside, they look industrious, but inside, they feel trapped. Their days blur together. The achievements mean little. Why? Because the work, stripped of connection to deeper values, doesn't feel important. Or picture someone endlessly scrolling on their phone, consumed by updates and opinions. Hours vanish, yet nothing lasting is built. The Stoics would ask, is this really what you want to exchange your life for? Marcus Aurelius wrestled with this same problem. Despite being emperor, with every distraction available to him, he forced himself to remember, at dawn, when you rise, think of what it means to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. In other words, don't waste your day. Don't drift through it. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing now worthy of the limited time I have? Now pause and apply this to yourself. If today were your last day, would the way you spent it feel meaningful? Would you be content knowing you gave your energy to what matters most? Or would you look back and wish you had chosen differently? These are not questions meant to guilt you. They are meant to wake you up, to shake you from autopilot and invite you to live deliberately. This question is powerful because it exposes a truth we often avoid. Much of our life is traded away for things we don't really care about. The Stoics urge us to be conscious investors of time. Time is the one currency you can never earn back. Spend it on what is important. But what counts as important? The Stoics give us a compass. Importance is measured by whether an action aligns with virtue. Does it make you wiser? Does it strengthen your courage? Does it serve justice, treating others fairly? Does it practice temperance, keeping desires in check? If the answer is yes, then it is worth your time. If not, then no matter how urgent it feels, it is not truly important. So here's the challenge. Before you dive into tomorrow, ask yourself this Stoic question. Don't just ask it once, ask it throughout the day. Is what I'm doing right now truly important? You may be surprised by how often the answer is no. And when it is, you have a chance to redirect your time toward what matters. This first question is like clearing the clutter from a room. It makes space, it removes distraction, and it prepares you for the deeper questions ahead. Because once you begin to focus only on what is truly important, you create the mental clarity to explore what lies within your control and what lies beyond. That is the second Stoic question, and it will take us even further. If the first Stoic question clears the clutter by asking what is truly important, the second question strikes at the root of much of our anxiety. Is this within my control? Epictetus began his little handbook, The Enchiridion, with this line: some things are up to us, and some things are not. He considered this distinction the foundation of all philosophy. Why? Because so much of our suffering comes from trying to control what never belonged to us in the first place. Think about the last time you felt powerless. Maybe it was in the workplace, a promotion you wanted but didn't get, even after all your effort. Maybe it was in a relationship you gave your best, but the other person pulled away. Maybe it was in the daily frustrations of life, traffic jams, rude comments, sudden changes of plans. In each case, notice how the sting comes not only from the event itself, but from the illusion that if only you had done more, you could have controlled it. The Stoics remind us, you can influence outcomes, but you cannot control them. What is within your control? Your choices, your judgments, your actions, your attitude. What is outside? The opinions of others, the results of your efforts, the randomness of fortune. If you confuse the two, you set yourself up for endless frustration. But if you separate them, you gain freedom. Picture a man preparing for a job interview. He can study the role, practice his answers, dress well, and walk in with confidence. All of that is within his control. But whether the interviewer is in a bad mood, whether the company already favors another candidate, those things are not. If he pins his self-worth on getting the offer, he is handing control of his happiness to forces outside him. But if he measures success by the quality of his preparation and integrity, then no matter the outcome, he can walk away with dignity. Or think of someone afraid to speak up in a meeting, worried about what colleagues will think. Can you control their thoughts? No. You can only control your clarity, your honesty, your delivery. The rest is theirs to decide. And when you remember that, fear begins to loosen. Because rejection of your idea does not mean rejection of your worth. It simply means they chose differently. Something beyond your reach. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is not resignation. It is empowerment. By letting go of what you cannot command, You free energy to fully engage in what you cannot. So let me ask you, how much of your stress comes from trying to control the uncontrollable? How often do you rehearse arguments in your head, hoping to change someone else's opinion? How often do you torment yourself over outcomes long after you've done your part? And what would change if, instead, you redirected that energy toward what is truly yours to shape? The Stoic path is not about indifference. It is about focus. Imagine an archer. His purpose is to draw the bow with skill, aim carefully, and release. That is all within his control. Whether the arrow hits the target depends on wind, movement, chance. He cannot control that. The wise archer does not despair if he misses. He evaluates his form, learns, and tries again. His worth is in the effort, not the result, and so it is with us. The second Stoic question: is this within my control? Is a compass you can carry into every situation. When fear or frustration rises, pause, ask it. You'll find that many of the things you suffer over never belong to you anyway. And in that moment, you reclaim freedom, the freedom to live with peace. No matter what happens, this prepares us for the third question, which goes even further. Because even when things go wrong, when failure comes, when rejection stings, the Stoics just ask, what can I learn from it? How can even this setback become fuel for growth? That is where the journey deepens. Failure, just the word, is enough to make many people uneasy. From childhood, we are taught to avoid it, to fear it, to treat it as proof of weakness. But the Stoics turned that idea upside down. They saw failure not as an enemy, but as a teacher. And that's why the third question we must ask ourselves is, if I fail, what lesson will I gain? Think about your own life. Chances are the moments that shaped you most were not the easy wins. They were the setbacks, the exam you didn't pass, the promotion you didn't get, the relationship that broke apart. Painful as they were, those moments forced you to grow. They taught resilience, humility, perspective. Without them, you would not be who you are today. Seneca wrote, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor strengthens the body, just as lifting weights steers muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger. Setbacks stretch our inner strength. Failure is not the opposite of progress, it is the process of progress. Imagine a man who launches a business, pouring his savings and energy into it, only to see it collapse after a year. On the surface, it looks like a disaster. Yet what lessons emerge? He learns how to manage risk. He discovers who truly supports him when times are hard. He gains clarity about what matters most. These lessons, painful though they are, become the seeds of his next success. Without that failure, he might never have built the wisdom to try again more effectively. Or take the example of rejection. You confess your feelings to someone and they turn you down. It stings. But what if, instead of letting rejection define you, you ask, what lesson will I gain? Maybe you learn the value of courage, that speaking your truth matters more than the answer. Maybe you learn that your worth does not depend on another person's approval. Maybe you learn that rejection clears space for someone more aligned with you. In each case, the failure becomes an education in strength. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Failure, then, is not a dead end. It is a doorway. It redirects you, reshapes you, and, if you let it, refines you. Now, ask yourself honestly, what if you began to see every failure as tuition paid for wisdom? What if, instead of hiding from mistakes, you collected them, examined them, and grew because of them? How differently would you approach risk if you knew that either way, success or failure, you would still walk away richer? Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, once said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That mindset is profoundly Stoic. Each failed attempt narrowed the path to success. Each mistake was not wasted, but essential dots so the next time you hesitate because of fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of falling short, pause and ask, if I fail, what lesson will I gain? Suddenly, the risk is no longer a threat. It is an opportunity. Either you succeed or you learn. Either way, you move forward. This third Stoic question changes your relationship with fear. It transforms failure from a verdict into a teacher, from a final chapter into a step along the path. And once you learn to see failure this way, its power to paralyze you begins to fade. But the journey doesn't stop there. The Stoics take us even deeper with the fourth question, one that challenges the very foundation of how we measure ourselves. It asks us to confront a hard truth. If failure doesn't define us, then what does? What truly gives us value? If failure doesn't define us, then what does? This is the fourth Stoic question, and it is one of the most important you can ever ask yourself. What truly defines my value? So many of our fears, fear of rejection, fear of insignificance, fear of being forgotten come from a hidden assumption that our worth is measured by what other people think, or by the trophies we collect. If the paycheck is large, if the title is impressive, if the applause is loud, then we feel valuable. But if those things vanish, so does our sense of self. No wonder so many feel lost. The Stoics rejected this fragile definition of value. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, reminded himself daily that wealth, status, and praise were fleeting. In Meditations, he wrote, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." What mattered to him was not the empire's applause, but whether he lived with justice, courage, wisdom, and self-control. Those virtues, he believed, were the only true measure of a human being. Epictetus, who was born into slavery, carried the same conviction. If his value had been tied to possessions or status, he would have had none. But he insisted that dignity lies in how we live, not in what we own. If you want to improve, he said, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, let go of other people's judgments. They don't define you. Your choices do not. Seneca went further, writing, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is." What he meant is this: if you measure yourself by shallow standards, misery will always follow. If you measure yourself by character, no external loss can strip you of worth. Let's bring this into the modern world. Imagine two people lose their jobs. The first sees himself as worthless because his entire identity was wrapped up in a title. He spirals into despair. The second grieves the loss, yes, but remembers that his worth is not defined by his employment. He still has integrity. He still has courage. He still has the capacity to contribute. Which of these two is freer? Which one is truly strong? Or consider relationships. Someone you care for rejects you. If your value depends on their acceptance, you collapse. But if your value is grounded in your character, rejection cannot destroy you. It may hurt, but it does not erase your worth. Now ask yourself, what have you been using to measure your value? Is it the size of your house, the number of people who admire you, the digits in your bank account? Or is it the depth of your integrity, the honesty of your actions, the strength of your character? One of these measures is fragile, the other unshakable. The Stoics remind us that when you place your worth in external things, you are a hostage to fortune. But when you place your worth in virtue, you are free, because virtue is always within your control. No one can take away your honesty, your courage, your commitment to justice. That is your true wealth. This fourth Stoic question forces us to reframe everything: jobs, relationships, even setbacks. If they do not define us, they cannot destroy us. And once you realize that, fear begins to lose its grip. But the Stoics didn't stop there. They pushed further with a final question, the most radical of all. Once you know that your value comes from within, they ask, can you go even further? Can you embrace even failure, even rejection, even loss, as part of your destiny and love it? That is where the journey reaches its highest point. This is the final, and perhaps the most radical, Stoic question. If fate has chosen this path for me, can I embrace it? It is one thing to accept what happens. It is another to love it. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. They believed that every event, pleasant or painful, was part of the larger order of the universe, a thread woven into the tapestry of life. To fight it was to fight reality itself. To embrace it was to find peace, even in suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." He meant that just as fire consumes and transforms whatever fuel it is given, so too can we transform every experience, failure, rejection, loss into growth. Nothing is wasted. Everything can serve. Imagine you lose a job you thought would define your career. At first, despair sets in. You feel stripped of identity. But what if, instead of seeing it as ruin, you saw it as redirection? What if you could say, this too belongs to my path. This too can shape me. Suddenly, the setback becomes a teacher, not an enemy. All picture rejection in love. It cuts deep, but what if you whispered to yourself, this rejection is also part of my story. It clears space for someone more aligned with me. It teaches me resilience. The pain remains, but it is no longer meaningless. It becomes meaningful because you choose to embrace it. This is the essence of amor fati, to not only accept life's blows, but to welcome them as necessary steps along the way. It is not passive resignation, it is active transformation. It is the courage to say, I will not only endure this, I will love it, because it is mine. Modern culture teaches us the opposite. It says, chase pleasure, avoid pain, control everything. And so, when life inevitably delivers suffering, people collapse. The Stoic path is harder, but stronger. It says, do not waste energy wishing reality were different. Use what is given. Shape it into fuel. Think of a soldier on the battlefield. He cannot control the terrain, the weather, or the orders he is given. But he can control how he fights, how he protects his brothers, how he faces danger. By embracing the reality in front of him, he finds honor. Or think of a parent whose child is ill. They cannot control the illness, but they can control the love they pour out, the courage they show, the example they set. That, too, is amor fati. Now ask yourself, what would your life look like if you could love even the difficult parts? How much fear would dissolve if you knew, with certainty, that whatever happens, you will find the way to use it? Failure would no longer paralyze you. Rejection would no longer break you. Even loss would not erase you, because all of it would belong. All of it could be embraced. This fifth question is not easy. It demands practice. It demands faith that life, even in its chaos, carries meaning. But if you can learn to ask it again and again, you will unlock a freedom few ever taste. The freedom to live fully, without fear of what may come, and so the journey reaches its peak. We began with simple questions about what matters. We moved through control, through lessons, through value. And now, we end with love, the love of fate itself. This is the Stoic answer to the meaning crisis. Not to escape life, but to embrace it. Not to demand perfection, but to turn even suffering into purpose. We've reached the end of our journey. 5 questions, each one peeling back another layer of confusion, fear, and emptiness, guiding us toward clarity and strength. First, we asked, is what I'm doing today truly important? That question cleared away the noise and reminded us that time is our most precious resource. Second, we asked, is this within my control? That question freed us from the endless frustration of trying to command what was never asked to command. Third, we asked, if I fail, what lesson will I gain? That question reframed failure from a verdict into a teacher, transforming setbacks into stepping stones. Fourth, we asked, what truly defines my value? That question cut to the core, showing us that worth is not in titles, possessions, or applause, but in our character, in the virtues we choose to live by. And finally, the most radical of all, if fate has chosen this path for me, can I embrace it? That question invited us to rise above resistance, to not merely endure life's hardships, but to love them as part of the story we were meant to live together. These questions form more than just a mental exercise. They're a compass. They point us back to purpose, to meaning, to a way of living that cannot be shaken by rejection or failure. And isn't that what so many of us are searching for in this time of crisis? Not more distractions, not more shallow comforts, but a purpose strong enough to carry us through whatever life brings. Let me ask you directly, which of these 5 questions struck you the hardest? Was it the call to focus only on what's important? The reminder to let go of control? The invitation to embrace failure as a teacher? The challenge to redefine your value? Or the radical courage of loving fate itself? Take a moment to answer honestly. That answer may be the first step toward living with more clarity and meaning than you felt in years. Because here's the truth. The meaning crisis will not disappear on its own. The emptiness you feel will not be solved by the next gadget, the next promotion, the next distraction. It will only be solved when you decide to live differently, when you choose to ask better questions and to live by better answers. And that choice begins today, not tomorrow. Not when life is perfect. Not when you figured everything out. Today, right here, in this moment, you can begin to live with purpose by practicing these Stoic questions. You can reclaim your time, reclaim your energy, reclaim your life. If this journey resonated with you, I invite you to go further. Subscribe to this channel, StoicCraft, where we continue to explore timeless wisdom from modern struggles. Share this video with someone who needs it, because purpose is not a private treasure. It is something we build together. And most of all, don't just listen, practice. Carry these 5 questions with you into the week ahead. Let them guide your choices. Let them sharpen your focus. Let them anchor you when the world tries to pull you off course. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. The same applies to purpose. Waste no more time waiting for meaning to appear. Live with meaning now. So as you step away from this conversation, ask yourself one last time, what will I do today that is truly important, within my control, aligned with my values, and embraced as my fate? Answer that with courage, and you will never again be lost in the meaning crisis. You will have found your compass, and more importantly, you will have learned how to live